Page 3, Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When O Supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With a supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated can also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha. Homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 every devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of fault, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15, the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time that Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vultus Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration of the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train into profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. To page 25, the short mandala. Sashi Poti Chukshi Metodra Rira Linji Nindi Gembadi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwaye Drogananda Jinla Jubasho Jetsa Lama Dampe Jinanji Jugu Kala Jenzi Jindine Sambe Duje Zemana Saje Chuji Chava Abdu So Idam Guru Ranya Mandala Kamniriyatayam Sanje Jadan Saje Jadan La Janjo Bada Dani Jazanje Dagi Chijin Jibe Sana Chola Benje Zanje Dobra Sho Sanje Chedan Saje Janjo Bada Dani Jazanje Dagi Chijin Jibe Sanamje Dola Benje Sanje Dobra Sanje Jadan Saje Jadan Janjo Bada Dani Jazanje Dagi Chijin Jibe Sanamje Dola Benje Sanje Dobra Kange Nijondo Wajon Wamewa Jimewa Shawa Mewa Damewa Wamewa Damewa Dade Dementi Jimmy Dua Nishishide Soba Sanje Mananje Damba de la Chazelo Yendu Jiwazana Gushi Nijin Shirize Kanyinda Dola Pembashina Lamshini Shilin Dezo Kandayanda de Metina Nambagodu Nasa de Zomba Nidishi Sumbazi Sanje Jin de la Chazelo Donye Jason de Juvela, Chis and Zakan Dindo, China Vamati de Jazola, so the Sashin de Landosh. Pandenda Lama Ramboja and Dog in Younger Pendation, Godation Begonages on the Gosan to you to the so. Oh, down the Kulon Kumsik capture us, Rosano. That Kulon di Ni Chitchos, that's some Jishin, Tungi say, Chitu, and 타도 산제지 고마토와 치고도 대체되네. 다 타도게 땡데데 디지 로심지신 레야네 디지
tended to be the Utoa Chewala Rani, tended to be the Utoa Chivo to TH, Tiring tender the Zinda the Nigi, some shows.
Correcting motivation once more, that should be the thought to relieve sentient beings of all of their sufferings and place them in Buddhahood. Here, Buddhahood, we're talking about the final well-being or the final bliss of Buddhahood. And in that sense, sentient beings should be our focus. But in order to do that, in order to be able to do that and place those beings in that final bliss, oneself has to be a Buddha first. So one is going to listen to the class with that motivation.
Hi, that go Tiring. Mix it, Jidun Chambo Gombo, the Jongondo change. The Jojo de Sung be Shijin, you do Bedongondo Rimbore, Tema Sewache, the Jidun Chambo Gombo, that day, Sewa Tindeji, and Tiring the Yin Yuchung, the Tangone, give some way to an area where risk outcome.
So rejoice, thinking especially today how wonderful it is one can listen to this teaching by the Protector Maitreya on the ornament of clear realization. In that sense, it expresses the perfection of wisdom implicitly, these path things, as and is clearly elucidated according to Buddha Shakyamuni's intent. How fortunate we are to be able to study that.
Hi, that the Chambasung Namjing, Sini, Dinner, and SMJ so chuju. Muzondo Tajimi, she is Laviandu. And SMJ so chuju, SMJ go the kissing Robsy Rosimbrera. That the Rianja Sem Jedan del Chidan that the Jundemenga Dunjikone, Lojan Jedan, Dashinyamji Cones. 다 조디 다 개치슈디 도드레 다 두종안조 뒤유 다 등만 망보 셰차라 당에 양자 결시에 지목하시로 다시 냠제단 군대 명화 든지권을 로장주 시험하시 다들이 sem기줄이야 믹세지 숨로 지어래 겨우다고 셈지 냠바다고 셈지 축주다고 셈지 어디직 시에샤나 됐어.
So we've been looking at these three exalted knowers, and particularly last time the exalted knower of an omniscient being, the very exalted knower of all aspects. And we said that such an exalted knower of all aspects was defined as having a fully developed exalted wisdom, directly realizing the 10 topics, mind generation and so forth. Important within that definition was this phrase or aspect of the mind generation, which we have looked at many times in terms of cultivating that unfabricated bodhicitta, either by the two methods of the 6 causes and 1 effect, or equalizing and exchanging self for others. I perhaps don't need to go through either of those 2 methods again, but there are other types of bodhicitta that are phrased, such as the king-like bodhicitta, then there's the captain-like bodhicitta and the shepherd-like bodhicitta, if you will. So we'll go through those briefly.
semkizuwa semki chanju sembe semkidu tamja chedan jorwa
no
odishig yorwa tamja ta semjila yewa chedan de mangbo shibje yorwa ngo kone yewa ta sanzam kone yewa ta pedo chudin kone yewa ta ta semkizun kone yewa sadi pena da gebuda semji sadi gebu 당보 그런 gebu차 아니 신데다 지 gebu차나 아니 지 노론주 몽부 여러 왔대요나 그런 그 미세디 제라로 같이도 여러 왔대나시 당보 최대적 심지어는 산제 라니 조고 산제 있고 몽원 등원의 체 아니 수수 산제 산제 차네네 심지 신 산제 있어라 고버 책임 시스템제야 되다.
Right, so now when we talk about cultivating bodhicitta, the question here is we're talking about the different means by doing so. So you can talk about like the entity of that mind generation, its characteristics, and the type of effort you have to put in to get to that mind generation. So here we're talking about a particular type of training. For example, the king-like bodhicitta, one is training in a king-like manner, because first that person generates this bodhicitta and becomes wealthy like a king, puts that effort in and becomes wealthy like a king would first, and having done that, is then in a position to be able to help others. So one sees in this case that first oneself has to become a Buddha and is motivated by that, and then when one is in the place of Buddhahood, can help others. So king-like. bodhicitta.
Tade tiyu nganazo no samlodang dewa shuk chambo yorela. Semgedan de peje mancha de jigu yor. Tapena nganazo manzu tangma susu dewa de dungeme deore. Ene ta lendege gyundeji namsha samlodang yor nge didu tangma gyudan jenla de ne chongore ro.
Yeah.
Ne gyujin de doge da nganazo ne juba dogo yore. Geji ki juba dogo yore. Ene juba done nganazo ta 미 치 소가르디 시로고요레 치네니 겨울랜도고 허리 겨울랜디 겨 찍랭고 요레 다 가을랭고나 찍라 대사면도 하고
야
얘는 애매나 겨요 말베와 겨 매나다 가서 된데 갈래 자고 개면도 하시다 네 시부시부지 갈래 자가 겨요 타쳐로 하고 겨 아마요 아니 진이 겨 치마 등하나서 다 된도당엔도니 신행엔도 메제 데메신 생도 하제로 신의 엔도메지 데메 대지 요군조 심능에스 대세상 딜레 당보 지 수수 네지 세대게 랭에 제와도 아직 태용 안 개와체션 저도 직 태용도 개와도 또 첨부시라며 미개와도 또 첨부시고 요된죠 안 대자마세 다 알레두즈 삼마다나네 개와치마딜라 덴돌레 지그레 삼산당 엔도 지그 마르 삼산 딩제 메브체로
Yep.
수수 거두고에 딩제 메버스나리 이제 메버스나르다 하고고야 말와 제가다 다 딘데게 직 예송네를 깨는다 배사거든 와 아니 마마 드야미시 내가 테스 카브레도 제가 당에서 그 동네에 지신 딜레교는 뭐 군조선라도 삼제네 디지교다 잠도 치고야 돼 제가 당고지 샘제다 딘데 상마당 공라야서 수수 동네 나다는 잠도 삼라야 고제 디지교 군조선의 예송다 아 지금에서는 그 동네에 잡혀야 그니버데 군조선라요 그래서 치왕의 남진님이 치외지 최면도 강의냐매 벤사다 치외지 최면도 강의에 벤사 최디다 잠도 좀제디 기회 최지고 고요라 군조선을 겼을 잠도 좀제디 기회 최지라 디기다 시루디 펜토그로 미신다다 펜토그 마레사다 어디에 삼노데스 당고요라
One needs to reflect in the following manner. Most of the way that we will generate this heart of awakening would be like this, as was mentioned in the king-like bodhicitta of going for Buddhahood first. Why? If we think about it in stages, all of the beings are the same, all the sentient beings are the same, that they want to be happy and don't want to suffer. So that's a given from the outset. And the way that ripens, the way that happens to the sentient beings of happiness or dissatisfaction and problems, it's really causality. And this is down to the law of cause and effect. It's changing every moment, in short. But what is a given is that at some stage our life force ends, or that life force separates from the body. We die and we have to take birth somewhere. Where we're going, it is not sure, but that's just something. Well, if we're not going to take rebirth, why all the effort now? There is that question for some. But, in fact, we know that we do have to take birth somewhere. It's the other case. So in that case, Lama Tsongkhapa says, well, there are only two possibilities. One can take a fortunate rebirth or an unfortunate one. And Lama Tsongkhapa puts it succinctly when he says, there's no guarantee that at the time of death one will not go to the lower migration. There's no guarantee at all. So in that sense, one takes a heartfelt refuge in the three jewels. So then under all of the context of that, what you come to see is that we're under the control of karma and disturbing emotions, either in a negative sense, strong. In that sense, the karma and disturbing emotions that we're powered by are very strong, but our amount of virtue is very weak in terms of their strength, respectively. So in that sense, the amount of control we have over the future life, rebirth, is very little. In a sense, we have no choice. Or the other way of looking at it, some people might even not have any faith in that. So one starts to see in this first level of understanding mind generation, before we even get on to this vast mind of altruism, we are looking at to this basic level of constraint where we're taking refuge in a valid object of the three rare sublime ones that will afford us protection from only going to the lower realms. And what we come to see is that in terms of affording that protection from an unfortunate migration, only the three rare sublime ones can afford that protection. In that light, then, when we think of these 3 points at the time of death, death is definite, its time is uncertain, and at the time of death, the only thing that one can take with you is your spiritual practice. That third one, what we're really talking about there is a valid mind of refuge at the time of death. That's what it means. No.
당에 송 동에레 타라 세대 미 저렘바이네 동에 쇼도 밀러와 ngranzo다 미 동에 하고도 다 전문인들 가져 미 세배 동에 가져도 아니 미 파족에서 수수수다 안딩상다 나자 셈게 나자 사바 먹고 쉬직던데 연구도 왔다 미래 상상라 배제 즉 미래 tundudan chidan shimitu 동에 용하면서 삼사를 지금 로야 랑도 치단 shimitu 아니 니 집에 쉬고도 알아 미가시 니 먹고 왜 동에 쉬고도 알아 아니 미가시를 배샤 말아왜 동에 치단 shimila 칼라 말아왜 동에 캬베 동에 식베 동에 다 대미시지게 다 나서나나 동에 저러 미시지게 밀라 딜을 하고 동에 배샤 말아왜 동에 야 담년다 말아वे 동에 아니 조보조모 망고 말아वे 동에 아니 수수양 조보도 카테वे 동에 야 조보 딕다로지 수수 마지버로 만드버로데 투베 동에 아뭐다 미 상상라 튼들레 미 동에 망하면도 상상도 봐라 나는 미 야가 이 나가지 그러
In short, what's being said is that we are seeking a state of liberation from these states of suffering. And in that sense, we can just see how human beings are suffering a lot in this world. At the moment, there are a lot of mental sicknesses in the human realm. Well, in some sense, if we compare humans to animals, dogs and cats might even seem to have it a little bit easier than oneself. Why? Well, in some sense, they sleep much better than us. We are going for money. They don't tend to have those issues of trying to get lots of money. Their main problems are, is it cold or warm enough? And will I get my food or not? They are not concerned. We're concerned with these sufferings. Okay, reputation, fame and name. We're concerned with friends. Do I have enough friends? Am I going to lose my friends? Am I going to meet people that I don't want to be meeting, enemies and so forth? Do I have to separate from the ones I love? So in some sense, humans say they're better off than animals, but sometimes you have to wonder.
제가 디인디다 코어디날 가때네 초스케면도 딜레 타바지고도 상 딜레 타베 타와도야 딜라네 타바사데다 삼로타로와 코월다 다 라니 수술을 삼다네 제가 당 알아 타발레 디기면도 수술을 거디지니게 세디게 파마게게 로마 아니 빈자 부고 다 아샤한다 데데 제데 겨와치마도 샘제 탐제 라나 거딘시 라나 제와치니 라나 로와치니 라기 디지 탐제 디지 가레나 내가고 디지 타도고 디지 가레나 조심지 신나드네 두고도 아제 디지에 동일 냥 디그면도 다 디지에 동일에 타와지 치고도 지산데 제르무진 라니 시ዞ로와 지신데 만주도 군이 테로 돈나도도 그게 자주 심조제와 신주로 송도
야야야
라니 시베 초라 코웨나라 동해냐단데 통용데 베텔란제 네 아지 수술 거딘신이 샘제도서 동해 대단냐는 디그면도 다 디지에 네 동일에 타와지 치고도 디지에 동일에 타와단 대화두베시데 네다 네스타 디지에 동일에 타와도 누버디 산제 냐제레셔 제산 대제 등에 산지 고만 타와 지기세 제가 미신 동에 세워 제발라 수수 동에 세마도 나나 미신 동에 세토고 말아봐 제가 두스체네 아니 제우도 비sem지 세 두스레 모더라
Yeah, King. So in that sense, the bottom line is that we are not free. Sentient beings are not free. We're not free. We're not liberated. So, of course, you have to think about your own situation in this regard and liberating yourself. Well, there is that, isn't there? You can think that far, that you yourself want to be free of problems and their causes. But that alone would not be enough, because it's not just about oneself, it's not just about you. One has close ones, one has relatives, parents, friends, uncles, partners, students, teachers, whatever. And in that premise, in the context of this life, and indeed many lives, they have shown you tremendous love and kindness, both in a temporal and an ultimate sense. So in that regard, your temporal and ultimate happiness depends on the kindness of other sentient beings. So then the thought would come to free those beings. In order to do that, one has to generate altruistic mind. So Lama Tsongkhapa says in this regard, just as oneself has fallen into the ocean of suffering, so have all mother migratory beings. And in order to free them from that state, please bless me, gurus, to generate the uncontrived, unfabricated thought of the bodhicitta. So now this is talking about a state of placing beings in a state of permanent well-being, not just a temporary one, but an ultimate well-being physically and mentally, and placing them in that state of ultimate liberation. And when you look at that from the point of view of being able to do that, then you have to ask, who is able to do that? Oneself can't do that at the current juncture. This placing all beings in these twofold things, beyond suffering and its cause, and then well endowed with bliss and its cause, compassion and love. So then, who can do that? Only a Buddha. So therefore comes the resolve, I myself must become a Buddha in order to bring that about. So this is like the king-like bodhicitta that we mentioned. You have to go for it first. Yeah.
도 스콤데스 겹제니 셈지 계단도 다 셈지 전주그 셈다 냠네 치토비나 아니 제델레 르데와 수수 셈기 버와 셈기와 아니 수셈기웨는 르데와 수수 르데와다 셈기웨는 아니 미션레로 치도고도 아니 다직 제델레 기버와 겨와치말레 아니 지 시갈라버델라야지 잠도 좀지기 잔죽심지 여기라야 톰바이나 밀루된 토바데 자자자셰 먹어라가 가르세나 6개월 제월에 대화대화 연구를 잔죽심을 하고 개월 합진지 요 말아 데데디 요요인 바라와 쳐서 디인디네 직문에 데네 대화 도야시도 아니 내 겨치마 아니 잔죽심다 아니 미세 잠도 좀지 잠도 군조 제된지 거네지 지페 티징 점로단데에 찬주기 셈 된데지 요나 아니 지겨지마데 양랑서 최요설을 태야 단당하랑서 말아서 뉴질랜드에다 제로 망보지 오스트레일리아다 뉴질랜드도 제겁다마데 제 오스트레일리아다 아니 근데 망보지 제래라 잉글랜드다 망보지라 저랑서 사자 망보를 제
카스칼라토
이나 델라 낭베 최요 말아 이나야 저랑서 낭베 단단 낭베 최단 태송아 이 겨왕아마디 어딘데 그 삼로직 당선적이 되버려서 제가 디 지틴데지 겨왕아마디 그 대화로 야고지 세워인자 나랑서 대지 최려야 터나 저랑서 터나체 깔래죠 지야도 레라고 말봐 제가 두스 체제네 지 산제지 공부해야 돼 칼레칼레 되어야면서 겨원에 겨와 두스나 두 상담배는 배 야보다로 당원에 뒤균다 진달라의 시비 연구를 깔래죠 태워치면 추 저디다 셈제다 직삼바상보디 열제다야 더랑도 배전 치투비이나 검잡투비이나 아니 직냠내 치투비이나 다 딜레야가다 전에요 말다
nothing better. So we should reflect in the following way. It's good for us to meditate on generating that vast mind of bodhicitta as we just went through with those stages of refuge and then generation and then that king-like bodhicitta, and then to practice that. Because to the best of our ability in this life, if we can practice that heart of awakening, that heart of altruism, looking out for the welfare of other, this life goes well. Physically, one is happier. Mentally, one is happier. And of course, if the mind comes first in terms of concern, then in a kind of mutually beneficial way, physically, you're better. So then the thought comes to look out for others' welfare, to help them. Now, if one gets to be able to have that kind of mind less contrived, more uncontrived, then this bodes well for our future, meaning that if we're able to carry such a thought through at the time of death, even if we have to contrive the bodhicitta thought at the time of death, 100% you can guarantee your birth will be human. Why? Because the cause and result is infallible. And if there's no better cause that you could create than the bodhicitta. And the strength of that thought is so strong, it will carry one. But not only that, at the time of death, when you have that bodhicitta, it should have as its basis a strong understanding of refuge. So you have to be grounded in that as well. Now, if we do that, we can ensure that in the future lives, we will be born in a Dharma place. Now, if we look at our immediate situation, we've come from all over the place. Some have come from New Zealand, some from Australia, some from Austria, some from England. Somehow, those places didn't have that much Dharma, really, before. But now we've met the Buddha Dharma here. And this is the result of what we did in our past lives. So now we're experiencing the maturational result of the cause that we created. That's not easy to do.
Switzerland, Austria.
Oh, sorry, Gisela missed something. Switzerland?
Turkish.
Turkey. Also, we have Switzerland and Turkey are represented. And Hungary. Tibet. Gisela, Tibet. So anyway, finishing off that. That's not easy, even to come here and put effort to come to this class, in this study Buddha Dhamma here, that's not easy. But if we put effort into that, that thing that we're going for, the Buddhahood, slowly, I think she said, eon by eon, we will get there. So to come to this class and make great effort in the great vehicle teachings, the Mahayana teachings, what can we do in terms of that great vehicle? We can try to practice kind heart every day. And if we in fact meditate on that kind heart, there's nothing better. Yep. Now we want to, we can discuss this when we get into groups, the characteristics of the mind generation and its aspects, and also like its divisions. It talks about its boundaries. So here it's from the Soklam, it's from the Mahayana. Yeah, it's from the Mahayana path of accumulation right up to Buddhahood are its boundaries. Mm-hmm.
제장다 체드죠 심지 토윤데 심지 가르장수 체드죠 심지 탐제지 산제지 고마 토바 지기 인스 제제다 심제고다로
예
다지도는 산제지 고마 토바 제월라 아니 람냠린 가르치고 레스데 아니 대 답란테 셰베 체드 심지기 제수 아니 당아 셰브레스다.
Okay, so now the method. So let's say one has generated the thought to become a Buddha and then place all beings in that state of Buddhahood. So the next question is, what do you have to actually do to train in that? What is the advice? How do you train in that? These are called the advice, the instructions, or the precepts. And this is on page 9 of your text, if you want to follow.
대진 당아 친이 들라도 대진 심지 시대 녀자 터베 탑된베 티진이가 라도
두아
탑 망버질랜데 탑마노데베 티진가 세야요레
오케이
티진 심지지로 티진 심지지 체데 티진 심지 터베 체데 아니 다 녀자디 아니 티진 순지기 가르토고레 산제고마 타와라 티 찬죽 심제고레 chanji sim jawa chewala ane tab nyamne khar gongore stende gombar chewe tijinji nga sigdo chezande tijinji nga
Okay.
sia shen goba shore da.
Right. So we're talking about the definition here at in terms of these precepts or advice of how to generate. So the definition of Mahayana precepts is Mahayana speech that teaches a method for attaining the object of striving for the Mahayana mind generation. Sometimes it's called the unmistaken method for obtaining the great vehicle of the Mahayana. So in short, what we're saying is that if your final goal is Buddhahood, you need a vehicle by which you do that, a great vehicle. So before Buddhahood comes bodhicitta, you need a method to cultivate uncontrived bodhicitta. And these precepts or advice are the means you do to cultivate that great vehicle of bodhicitta.
Ta chezan nila yewa sha ndu tijin dombe dang, tijin jideng dang, tijin dombe dang si yuanden ma toba toba chewerwa. Ta tijin simji toba la nga zo nyamne chu togorwa yuanden sardu ma jewa jewa chewe tab. Ani jideng sa di jesimba kondi pewa chewe tab. Ta zo tab nyi na la dudugo yo reswa.
We have two divisions here. When divided by way of entity, there are two: precepts instructing on the Mahayana and precepts of subsequent Mahayana teachings. The first one is the method by which you obtain insights you don't already have, and the latter is the way to increase those insights, to make them expand, to make them firm.
Tadila dumzeji kone yidi tadi nenga chimbo shivaji rwa tanda jizun chamba gombo ta lam nyamne rupdangi rimba zoji dine ma sheyongoro ju shaadawa tanga ju dumzeji kone ti duwa ranji ngo la tamba sirwa miyu denpa shi la tamba ten kunjo sun la tamba ta de ching chagdo rupdan denpa nanda ni sanje la so kunjo sum sayde chizan duwa ranji ngo la tamba sila wende ta ne tijin semji chetisho semji tamje sanje goma togu yo na ane semji ki nyamlen che gore semji nyamlen choba semji ki nyamlen che wala thangbo khar che gore denpa nyi ji nawa denpa nyi ji namsha de yagu shen gore song gore da
Right.
duwa ranji ngo la tamba thangbo denpa nyi ji namsha de yagu shen gore de song gore da.
What the Protector Maitreya has done here has divided these into 10 precepts or 10 pieces of advice, if you will, on how to train in that great vehicle. So therefore, they are listed here. So the modes of instruction, the modes of training are 10. So as it says here, the first ones are by way of the achievings, meaning what you will achieve in terms of its entity, and then the objects of observation, the four truths, and then the basis of three jewels, and so on. In short, when we come back to this first one, you have to have a working basis that the person is working with. What is that working basis in terms of entity? It is the two truths, Dembanira.
다 덴바니 남샤디 다 nenga 가르쳐고 올라서 나가서 말한지 내다 강에 망부 쉬우지 ngoyne주 미시베 온케와 ngoyne주 다 ngobene주 될라 내가게 다 군조 덴바다 전난 덴바 쓰고요 다 군조 덴바 써야 돼 ngobo 내가 그 둡단으로 싫어 내가 둡단으로 된거 빼나 다 지금 거라 버렸잖아 포바디 양코 단도 포바 차송한테 제디지 양코 마자네 양 신다시네 양 제신다주 고 주어도 내가 주어도고도 하고 저 군조 덴바스되네 내가 그 ngobe 둡단시 다 전단 덴바스다 포바디 아니 랑원에 두바 포바디 덴바투바 요 말에 있어야 돼 딜레 타도베다 ngoben일로 타도지 빼나 포베딩이 체제 포바입니다 봐 포바 체워 포바 닝지 뭐 포바 충중 포바 첨보 써야 된다 망고시어로 두수 상모 요로고다 포바 충주 포바 첨보 포바 닝지고 포바 닝지고 뭐 요로고다 다 디네 마마마마마도 포바 덴바투베 동어디 요 말에 있어야 돼 어디 타도게 줍단데 봐 타도고 줍단데 세상 타도고 줍단데다 내가 줍단지 니용거로 ngoben내줄 당은저 데마시베 안게 나은절이야다 단다 아니 가서 니니 남이 칸 미시바 디네 남도로고 랑해서 타녀 된바 탑스 좋아다 된다도 탑준 좋아니 대니 남이 강이 메시와 되네 남도로 배랑메 대니기 남시데 반데다 와단 대만이기 남이 야고 마시베 온게 안건저 심라 남도 로망고 시제제 안을 로고 슈도 요레스 대왕게 안건저 코알라 코데기 요레스 다디 송고요로.
So now, in terms of the working basis, the entity upon which we will have these achievings, these results, is the two truths. So the two truths are the temporal truth or relative truth and ultimate truth. How does that work? Well, let's look at the relative truth first. The relative truth is the way things function on a conventional level. So if we look at the example of the cup goes through change momentarily, it breaks and so forth. Eventually it will break down. Sometimes it's a big cup, sometimes it's a small cup, whatever. But the nature of that cup is impermanent. It could be beautiful or whatever, but here, conventionally, nominally, that cup is going through change. But when we chase all of those attributes down, there's something more final and underlying with regards to the cup. And that is the fact that the cup lacks inherent or true existence. So now you have those two levels then with regard to the cup, the relative truth and the ultimate truth. So finally, because we're ignorant of these two levels of truth, relative and ultimate, we suffer. Chandrakirti says that due to being ignorant of these two levels of truth, relative and ultimate truth, sentient beings project things, they make mistakes, and then they suffer uncontrollably in cyclic existence.
And the donor,
yeah.
Power you go John Shiva dose, power you go Jun Shiva. Dongba Shiva, Jawa maybe two. Mishivan and Joa Chamjua, that two Jingawe, Tabzuji, Wajadajan to us, Dongba Shivata, number the Namda Gosumji Namsha, the Mishiva Ongi, and in on the Toa, Koala Chamdo, your race, Tinza, Jumden de Yene, took G, took Zeve Ongi, and Ribenam the Taiwe Gone, Movene Lutadu, the Dana Pasha, your race, or the Sundo.
Tambo Sumdi, Tongba
Shiva, Jawa Mevetsu.
Tongba
Shiva, Jawa, Namda Gosum.
Yeah, Namda Gosum. So as we hear Lord Buddha saying in Sutra, due to sentient beings being ignorant of the three modes, which are emptiness, peace, and non-production, sentient beings being ignorant of those three modes of things, they wander endlessly, wander all the time in cyclic existence, suffering as a result. So seeing that out of a heart of great compassion, Lord Buddha set forth thousands of stainless reasons to remove them from that suffering, dispel that suffering.
Other did Nedan de Mashiva Onge, Lesa, Leo Onge, any that call Kodea, Ledia, Le Jangwala de Choma, Jigdinazo Lele Chungslara. Ani di Zawa di Sibeza Tajetus, that and the Blue Nikiro, Jigdin, Nugi Jigdin, and Jug Simji that Tamje Lela de Chores. On the Le Conala de Chores, Le Conala de Chomare, Di Zawa, and Numo Sibeza Tajetus. On the Jashida, Conroda, Majamaritan, Tenzoni, the Sibeza Tajetu, Dejat, Dejat, Conroda, Majamari and Tenzom Sirva. Dejala Yawanichina, that Sibeza Tajetu, that's all the Jeti. Leg Gulon, Leya, Sonye, Gulon or the Jeti, Zawa Sibeza Tajetu. Dije Tatuna, Timu de Mariwala de Nechon. On the Dende La Juni, Tome Mariwa de Home Jigleg Gulon de Mariwa Shagdo, Tanzi, Nashing Nas, Tanzi, Mariwa Shagdo. That does Nega does Tangone Nangbe Chugi. Rumshire, that Rumshi, that in Venezuela, or some time you didn't use Redo. D1 Koala Koyagi, and those Pungudilla to make them batang. And the day Pungu Kune Longe led Leg Kunjundemba, and the day Zawa Sibeza or Tajedilla, Yomo Kunjundembas, koala jugweri me on the chede and jugunyo dembatan to density. And me dembashila dambasat that name word dembanine me dembashila dambasat.
Okay.
Tayabu de dada ruda.
So then coming back to what is behind it all, this ignorance, grasping at true existence, due what that statement from Buddha is saying from sutras, that due to the volitions, the karmas, the sentient beings in cyclic existence, and they're going around and round, and then karisa zernang vasabandhu. So in the treasury and metaphysics, we hear that the world system is a product of karma, and then what do they say is the vessel-like world. So this world is a product of karma, and then what do they say? The vessel-like world and the content-like beings, it is said, are a product of karma. And then the question comes, is it only just karma? Well, no, there are also these afflictions. Karma, these mistaken volitions or actions are coming from invalid states of mind, the afflictions, of which are listed as being six-fold main, isn't it? So you have like ignorance, kind of like desirous attachment, aversion, and then jealousy, wrong views, doubt, all of these. But and then what it says is that the craving within cyclic existence is a product, really, of these afflicted mental states. And the karma that produces them, the karma that results from those afflicted minds, afflicted states. So therefore, it comes back really to the volitions. And when we talk about the volitions or karmas, when you look at the root of that, behind those volitions, behind those mental and physical actions, you have what's called the ignorance grasping at true existence. So if you look at the 12 links, we're talking about the first of those 12 links. So the very base of those 12 links is the innate grasping at true existence. From that, volition and then consciousness and so forth. So then we start to look at why we are suffering physically in terms of the first two noble truths. We're talking about all of this under the premise, remember, of the two truths as a basis, and how the two truths go into the four noble truths. Well, let's come back to those four noble truths. Why are we suffering physically? Because we have a contaminated body that is a product of karma and afflictions. So then that comes into the second noble truth of true origins. But then we have to look. So that twofold cause and effect is the way you enter into the unenlightened premise of samsara. So how about reversing that cycle so that we reverse samsara? So then we come to the latter two truths, the true cessations and true paths, that there is in fact a way out of it by removing karma and disturbing emotions and becoming liberated. So right therein you see the two sets of cause and effect, the four noble truths, and how they relate initially to those two truths. Yes. Now, to look at this from one angle, it seems like it's all misery and suffering. Like almost like there's no way out. But Buddha saw the reality of that. What Buddha saw was that there, in terms of this thing we call samsara, is there's like a forward progression, if you will, or a causal progression, and then a reverse of it. So there's a way you enter into samsara and the way you reverse it. So Lord Buddha was concerned really with this reversal method. So that is what gives us tremendous hope. The fact that there's a method of true cessation and true paths. That's where we are.
tarwa ko dungedile tarwe tawa tarwa de ko densro
Yeah.
tendeji yonggu yoda mese de tangela logyu da dumsre malawa che su ta ngaranzo changmalo dijun nge tujune labudo nganzo bidding meditation chigiwa
Yeah.
de gomde je yakuro chuine tes kibudo aro chumi ji namdo 아니 지 남자 중으로 둬야 독반 남도 중으로 둬야 아니 뒤에는 가서 미디어가 가르라고이나 미디어를 가르라고이나 양 강에 된데도 가 가르지고나 류를 강에 된데도 가르지고 어느 셈나라 봐 셈바마지오 쇼지 제제 대구다 다 우중 공로지 교연 뒤장갈 뒤에 상문에 내갑지를 봐 제베 소리로 제제 때들은가베 시딩딩 로직 잠딩딩 로직 직도와 시버로직 다 내가 그게 곡된지 레도 같아요. 내가 디 야고도 디 수수 데스 녀어로 데데도 사데 되나 어디다 데도네 데데지디 야고시도 아삼 데톨로도 곰데스 자고도 삼자로 지와 아니 지 우중 곰디야 지네 직내제르지 야르도 되네 지 주미지 남도도 봐 뉴르 로시도 수수수라야지 수수수수 가오 공부해 아직 당하라 뭐마 나신게 지 삼바 강에 첨부된 되게 면조로지 테스트 야르 도샤 아섬 수수수 가오 공부해야 된대 이 용구로 왔다데 내가 그게 곡된지레스 내가 그 타와 친주지레스 다로
So then this state that the reversal of cyclic existence, the true cessation, the liberation, it's liberation from suffering, isn't it? So then one asks the question, can that come about? Can that come about for oneself? Is it a reality, this true cessation, this liberation? Well, as I've mentioned before, don't just leave it as a story or read historical accounts about it. From your own experience, can that come to be? And what we come to see is that when we start to do breathing meditation, if we're doing it continually, there's more of a space in the mind. And in that space in the mind, there's gaps from what are called these mental constructs become less. And when you start to have a kind of lucidity of mind, where it's quite peaceful and just at rest, there's less of a concern about, what is so-and-so going to say to me? What should I say to them? Why are they always complaining about their body? Or why are they always unhappy? Why am I always unhappy? When you do continual meditation, that's just suspended for the minute. You leave all of that. That is left behind. And the mind starts once more to have this lucidity and freedom. Now, really, that is our experience of true cessation, isn't it? And what we start to see is that type of mental bliss is a good thing. We want that happiness. And as we meditate more and more, that gets better and better for us as we get more, as we put more effort. Then as our meditations get better, the mental thoughts become less and less. And we can see over time in the change in our mind. And if we can see that change, we should actually rejoice for ourselves and kind of think, I've improved a bit since back then. That's okay.
다들 너도 디 jonzokhashi 신이 다 뒤는 공자 넘버 미과지고요. 좀 된데 꾸미과지고이나 미과들 앉아체. 네 미과디 공룡 맞아 콘라네. 비디 exercise 까망아 주든데 전에야고요래. 아니 쌤데 배 잠팅팅 차오다가 아니 양자 domba 곰디간을 쌤이 샤데빈 아니 야고 차용 거로. 근데 내가 가도 있는 비디 exercise 디 미과라비나 가시 다 domba mikwa chigiyona domba da susul hadena de zalamada de mikwa chigiyona mikwa de ranjache mikwa de maje gonla ya de breathing exercise de breathing meditation de kamanga juji chebina ane ji khazore ngonzo re simde ji gemigi namdo mewechi kulun zangmazang yang re kawna shicha re kawina khogona chö khare japchogoro odena shinche charugo yore cheda de longjong de pe misige Nuva Chimbotang, Pen Chimboredo, did this. Yansi Gaptovina, and Yabuduasra.
I know some of us are training or are interested in cultivating calm abiding. To that end, I think the breathing exercise, breathing meditation is very good. Whatever object one chooses to focus on, for clarity of mind initially. So those that might have an instruction from someone, whomever, or might have already been using as their focal object the image of Buddha Shakyamuni as a statue, and then focusing on that in their mind's eye, that's fine. What I'm encouraging is to first, before you place the mind single-pointedly on that image of Buddha, is to do some breathing exercise before that, for 5 or 10 minutes. It is very much, and then the mind will be clear. It's very much like before one dyes a cloth, it's good to have the cloth in a neutral color of white, and it's easier to make that cloth change color. So it's the same with the mind. When the mind is in a state of clarity, neutrality, when there's less conceptual thought, then you can place it once more single-pointedly on the object you've chosen.
yanzu tumi ji namdo re dan bena dosya ya ji komro chami goro den jo ne shine tobe ina shine madobe ina ji ya ne sem gi namdo da shine tobe ina ne dewe du ja da nyomo da de je changma ta simla pha timbe sor shirwa redo wadi namdo de je tumi ji namdo de je kom ja de ko tumi ji namdo de simne chongorwa ne kolo thana ma de de ne ko pha ye ru yo ye sa de kha ye gore simle ye ru yo ra sim gi ding la ye ru yo ra Singudung le yedu wenza yang jele genji tayundu simnane tsushayong korwa. Chezang anzo shine top tsambe ina yang ane debe nyomong wonde juje shine nyamyadwa shine jogu nyamdo darwa. Chezang digarasena dujada shidanda dige de simji ngola pa timbe sorsharwa.
Okay.
Ta dima imbache ta simgudingi chunirwa simgudingi tongbani la nyamba shayundu simgudingi tongbani la nyamba shayundu ane de ngola yada dujada shidanda dige sesna 양자수의 계토고요 말다. 양자수 계토 매번 계토고 매번 인자 아니 생기는 게 춘이지. 돈이라 냠바샤 곰잡잡잡연데 네. 되자다 뉴모다 주미 진남도 이제 돈이 중얼로 파스 세베 팀베서로 차원데.
오케이.
아니 디네수 샤주 매번 인자 아니 다 뉴모 세베 세바 타르바셔야 돼. 딘데스체네 용구요레스타 데게네 안다디 고물로도지 자와시를 레단 요모 세베 타셔야 돼. 디네다 레단 요모 세베 타셔야 돼. 디네 용구요다. 싱기딩 춘이라. 냠버샤 삼단토비나 아니 용구요서레 디 용구도 왔다.
So if we get or cultivate shamatha or not, the mental constructs in that process will become less. And if, in fact, one does obtain calm abiding, you'll notice the thoughts dissolve back into the mind from whence they have come, because these discursive thoughts, mental constructs, are coming from the mind. So it's almost as if you no longer pay them any heed, and if you don't give them any power, they'll dissolve back into the mind from whence they've come. But if your calm abiding is just calm abiding, there's a danger that shamatha or calm abiding will degenerate, because all you've done is dissolve these mental constructs or seeming afflictions back into the mind from whence they've come. You haven't dissolved them permanently. So that is why, if not cultivated continually, the calm abiding can in fact degenerate. When the mind meets with the conditions for the temporal, abating of the afflictions to come back. Now, so what you have to do then is focus on the final nature of the mind with calm abiding, semki chuni, which is the true nature of the mind, the void nature of the mind. So that when you are focusing single-pointedly on mind's voidness as your object, what happens is that those afflicted states of mind dissolve into the expanse of that mind and do not return. So that's what we call being liberated from the bondage of afflictions, or a true cessation, as Nagarjuna succinctly puts it in the heart of, or the root of wisdom. Cease karma and disturbing emotions. That's what it means.
제가 레다 뉴몬 세베 타디 꼭딘 세디 저보단 뒤에 세르도.
Dadela.
제가 저보 가래스나 아니 꼭 가래 꼭요래 꼭지기 람딘기 또 아니 그런 거게 디워가베 각자텔라 꼭딘 세와. 제가 저보지기 니 자와 제발라 때네 아니 덴바레스와. 저보 가래 라비온데 니 돈용무슨도 배람들다. 돈용무슨도 배람들. 다 돈용무슨도 배람들라 아니 람딘세. 대도게 아니 즉 돈이 갈아야베 냠바샤 출루추샤 냠바샤인데 딩홀라 아니 되자 시단 콘동아제게 사변 티무디지 마르 짜와 먼저 되자 시단 티무디제디 커네지기도 마리보데네 지기도 마리보디 살라미게바 추진 제바 인자 아니 싱데마스나 짜와 코란 제송으로 짜와잖아 양갈로마 참감도도 어디나 신소리지 차제네 돈용무슨도 별로디 또게 꼭딘 탑단데 다디 내가 디 예바디 용서 신고 요레스로 일단 레다 뉴몬 세베타 레다 뉴몬 남도를 대달 줄려줘네 동반 니지 가고 주서 동반이 돈용무슨도 별로디 또기 아니 디 레다 뉴몬 그때 남도 디제디 파가도 그래 세도 그래 스무도 디시기 남냠네데 디나나 송용도 하다.
What is happening in this case for the person is a true cessation. So the afflictions will have ceased within his or her mental continuum. They are no longer more. They will have ceased. But the person to have gotten to that state or to experience that cessation would have had to have applied a method. What is the method? The method would be a true path. So, for them to get to that state of having ceased the afflictions in their mind, they would have to have trained in the true path. What is that path? It is a wisdom consciousness realizing emptiness. This is a true path. So therefore you have the two true cessations and true path, the attainment and the method of attainment. So therefore, it is very much, as we've mentioned, like water merging into water. These afflicted states of desires, attachment, and aversion, and so forth, and are a product of ignorance, and that ignorance becomes no more. It is no more, very much like the mind and its object merging into one, water into water. The analogy is that when you cut the root of a tree, you no longer have the branches, leaves, or fruit of the tree. So that is... Yeah, so that's coming back to Nagarjuna's verse where he says, cease karma and disturbing emotions. Karma and disturbing emotions come from thoughts of inappropriate attention, mental constructs. These come from elaborations of true existence, and elaborations of true existence cease in emptiness. So that's what it is. These mental constructs are ceasing for that person in emptiness.
죄송합니다. 미유 덴바실라 담바체. 데네 덴 군조선라 담발라 미데다. 덴 죄송합니다.
알레기슬라 디카사 담낙 디는 거지. 덴바시라 아니.
그래당을.
텐다디 언제 담낙 디콜레시요. 와 추디. 테리.
당아 주나는 시.
야.
근데 누가라니 올라 담바시. 미유 덴바실라 덴 군조선라 담바스.
오케이.
땡군조선라 담바데 따다다데 내려용 거라 미 담바실라 담바디나네 땡군조선라 담바데 가래라나다 디나네 네 코알레 탈 산제지 고마토와디고 유나 라 잡던바보디 네 산제다 잡고 추군조 잡드베다 군두군조를 땡고 요래 대야단다 콘디셰 미 담바시나게 돈용선도 별로다나 고딘티니라 람딘체 와 추군조 티 줄레덴베 칸산데라 파베 칸사 제로와 아니 군두군조체 아니 데다 냠슬람발라테네 아니 산제지 군두 다 산제 갑디 산제데 니지 다 가서래 갑된 바보 산제 깜고에 추군죠 갑도에 따로 근디군죠 어다디리 다디 dimba시기 남샤디 아버지시나 아니 군조숨기 남샤 시망보지게 잠도 치고야 돼. 내가 자 통고면도 시기도 하러. 내가 전부 쉬지러 가서는 아주 시갈라버들 미시다. 시갈라버들 아니 장마 샤도 하고 그러다 강바 샤도 그래 수수 부구 샤도 그래 김에 샤도 그래 강 수수 류인진의 샤도도 안당아 가와도 그래 당아 수익적 그래 알아로 수요래서 대내갑들 아니 단당 안주 다 프랙티스 시고라 당원에 디 직바디 원에서는 단달 직바든데 레고 거들래 간저 레고 엄마라 저 직바디 레고 직바 레고 엄마라 직방원에 디 곰자 먹어거든요 시갈라버들라 우가 로드다 레고 거라 디네갑들라니 아지다 동에들레 껴වෙ는 거 군조스면 열에 잡다 아 군조스면 천지 삼 대양에 응예직수수게 다지 깨와게 깨가나지 동에 디제 최대저 심지 탐제지 코쇼버쇼 심지 신이 깨가나지 아니 심지 신이 지 동에 녀야도 동에 디파 코쇼버쇼 삼삼로든데 단토이나 아니 시갈로들 베티 찬주샘 기땅 잠로 셈베 수 셈하고 싶ले기도
야
딜레스는 아니 다 겨지멍원에 된로 도와대 다 낭다 요 말다 어다데 익제 탐에 익제라고 된거 데르다 탐에 매직 익제 탐마데 되래다 디디 파스션 디고 다 단데도와 네거티브 딩마티 케요 말다 그 야도르 마도르.
So then we start to see that that understanding of the Four Noble Truths and how it relates to the basis, your understanding of the three jewels, the three rare sublime ones. In that sense, because we talked about the basis, when we talk about this, the precepts which instruct the basis of the three jewels, how does that relate to the Four Truths? Well, there's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then in order to get to that goal of Buddhahood, one has to get true cessation, which we were just talking about with regards to the Four Truths. And one does that by the means of the the fourth true paths. So that's the way you understand the connection there between the Four Truths and the three rare sublime ones. So then we have the affording protection in terms of the three rare sublime ones, the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, that is the real Dharma jewel, the second one we just mentioned, and the Sangha. Now that third Dharma jewel, the Sangha, is the person that has realized in his or her continuum that truth of the path that we mentioned, that true cessation by the means of the true path, wisdom, consciousness, realizing emptiness. So therefore you come to see that the teacher is the Buddha is the teacher, and then the second jewel is the real protection, and in the Sangha are those who have realized that truth. Now this is important understanding in terms of when we die, because if we're really grounded in this understanding of refuge and the Four Truths, what comes up at the time of death is that we have to leave everything behind. We have to leave the houses, the children, the loved ones, and even the body. So at the time of death, quite a bit of concern can come up around that. You might even have thoughts like, who will help me now at that time of death when you have that last breath? So then the point is to be able to practice now, and then that time will come. So we're practicing, using the breath and so forth, but that time will come. So then if you can practice at the time of death, that is the main point. You have to be able to work with it. So at the time of death, if one can think in the context of those three jewels, may the sufferings of the sentient beings who are going through birth, aging, sickness, and death, may all of that ripen upon me as you're going through this death process with your last breaths. And if you can generate such a thought that mind generation, you can be assured of a good future rebirth. So this is very much like the final exam, the big exam that we're all going for, and we want to get a pass during that exam. What we do now, going here and there, that's not much. That's not much compared to that.
다디 내가 전부 줍단데 만난데 산제 지는 참고 공부는 거다. 람냠랭지 치당 그런 바 송용고도.
Yeah.
다디 세상 삼로디 디니네야 체 디시체. 다디 뒤균에 삼로데 전단 단다 디 공데 라니 스스로 하시도 만주 도그니 되도 수수 코하게 동해라 뇽단텔 삼로 단제 네 심지 신지 동해 삼당고래서야디 또 코드연디네 단다 도와란 용어를 담바 미유 덴바실을 담바사 네마 디가 둘러 코드연다 레고고 요레스로 다 랍자 지든 참고 공부 먼저 제외이네 최 대송그래와 지단 다 먼저 송이야 최 다딩 안한저 단다데 시에서나 아니 삼로 망고 당구도 책디 시에서는 삼로 망고 당 아니 삼로 당에 아니 치즈다 칼레라 되네 냠네 치아르미셔 지금 당보 삼로나라 쳔네 말레 냠네 치도야 면도 와다디 삼로 망고 당 아니 셈나라야 지베 템보야고 차연데 아니 고 니두시제다 직딘시게 네 잠로게 냠네 네 찬주싱게 냠네 다 디니다다 개침보셔래 로아 디니다 디니가 여베이나 네 수수 되게 지금 서해난에 수수 삼바 파페 버여로 강아강에 가르치나 로봇이 직 유에스로 잠로이나 강에 가르쳐베이나 로봇이 직 유에스 아니 심지신 저저 지 내가 그 지다 직된 용다게 때세 내가 제와단데 용거데 수수 푹들라 아제도 상마 아니 알베다 내가다 다두기 디지 상마 조 심지 달라데네 총어레다 도좀베 컨디션 되죠 단다는 내가 저거를 삼데 수수 셈나네 배직 셈다 녀볼래야당 아니 집에 셈나라야지 가서로 초월어지래야당 와다지 수수 겨왕함에게 레고 안게 내가 때도 드머리 용데도 알하버데 데베네즈니 먼저 사사를 주다케요 말이다 마음발랑하면서 야고 제도 졸라네 어두스세제 니마 섬로시 당제다 제가 계전 정말 23개 산당한테 파진 대회 계절어 파진 대회 계전 정말 23개고 요다 제대다 계게 말해서.
So coming back to this advice of Maitreya Buddha, we have to really think on this again and again, where it says the achievings, the two truths, the achievings, which means the two truths, the working basis or the entity, what we're working with, then the four truths, then the three jewels, then the Buddha, and so forth. This has a tremendous meaning for us. Just as we said previously, just as oneself is in the unenlightened predicament of samsara and has experiencing these problems and wants to be free of them, it is just like that for all other sentient beings. So in that sense, we have to have a reflection on this. So the way we're going to do this reflection is by reflecting on the basis we're working with, which once again are these two truths, and the method or the focal object, which is these, like Four Noble Truths, and then get the result from that. So we need to reflect on these points a lot, reflect on them again and again. And that's because if you don't reflect on these points a lot and go deeper into them in terms of analytical meditation, you'll never really get experience of it. You'll never really get an experience of it. So in this sense, we can say that the basic things of refuge and bodhicitta are indispensable in terms of our experience. So then that means that when we do come to pass away at the time of death, we will have a friend. We will have a valid friend that is refuge that some other sentient beings may not have. What is our valid friend of refuge in bodhicitta? We would think at the time of death how other living beings have been kind to us in a temporal and ultimate sense. And when you get that sense of that kindness of beings at the time of death, then you're going to get a closeness to them, an altruism or a warmth or concern for them. Okay, so past lives, difficulties and karmas on the level of causality will ripen for us. Problems are there. But if we try to work with it and live through it day by day, we will have something to work with there. Isla chik sang ma song ka.
Then to you and other Jidang, you will gang in the cherry, Kunjo Sumuna, Mala watching you to me, Lord de Voyores.
Yeah, so generally when we're going through problems in life, if we really understand it, we can think that we have the friend or the friend of the three jewels that will support us a way out of it.
Tidua Jamdo Kunjo Sumla Iji Yurina, Namdu Nala to do, Namdu Masadona, that Kunjo Sum Chen Tingadonamsa.
Right. So that's reality. If we're in a plane and the plane's going down, we can think on the three jewels.
Did you think that? Yeah, she's a number of months to
So, if you travel a lot in planes, your refuge will become firmer because of that.
Maybe go to bungee jump. That they shower.
Yeah, we'll stop for today.
We
do have discussion, yes. Kishlai, we do.
Oh, dangi de la imbada. Semje sanzam de de chero. Semje la da ji semje ge. Rwa sanzam gone pedro chudin gone yewa sa de member semje juwa semje de doa. O de zo jikto. Ani semje dan de da jabu de semje ju sumde do. An danga ge de je ma da ji nega chembore. Running all of the me temperature, Dengu from the Tambadi, Yanga Jik Rotumina, that the Samluna like the Mundojin Tigro, Dudan de Manam, and the Sanjala of Punjo Sum. Tick to the illusion, took to the Chin of Chimbora.
Now we will discuss this or everything around the mind generation, its boundaries, and so forth. And then its entity, and then we'll look at different types of mind generation. I think we looked at the king type of mind generation. Also, we talked about war, so those things. And then kind of the entity of those things, the entity and their characteristics. Here, when Maitreya Buddha talks about these achievings, meaning the entity of what we're working with, the basis, the focal object, which is the four truths, and the basis, which is the three jewels, Buddhahood and so forth, we should go through all of that.
Oh yeah, that is so.
We'll stop for today. I forgot to mention, we should also go through the aspiring and engaging bodhicitta types, awakening mind.
Opening.
Page 31 for the short mandala. Sashi Pogitrushi Mentok.
Rega Linji Ninde Jemba de Sanje Shinde Mide Uwai. Nanda Jingla Jeparajo Zela Me Kuzera. Nanga Dile. Oh, Dembe Deme Sasumye, Dove Mezela Neyoje. Guru Mandala Gamne Yadayami.
Due to the
Merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state.
May supreme joy by achieving that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish,
but increase more and more.
whatever slight possibility of I may have created, by paying homage, offering and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting nothing but
Buddha's name teach.
I now dedicate all this full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious ones thus gone to the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma Sankalpa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles
Be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech. May all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Snowland of teachings of transmigratory beings,
who makes extremely clear the path that is the unification of emptiness and compassion.
To the lotus holder, Tenzin Gyatso I beseech. May all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.
You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who
Serve
serves
the bountiful bearer of all,
sustaining and preserving and spreading Manjanath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers.
honoring the 3 jewels,
Save with myself and others,
your disciples, please live long. By relying on the 2 accumulations of myself,
and others in the 3 times,
may the teachings of the conqueror Sankalpa blaze for a long time.